Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another of our regular episodes of Three Girls, One Deck. Today is going to be a little different because we don't specifically have like a deck-related topic to talk about. We decided rather than talking about decks this time around, we would talk about tarot in a slightly more like general sense, and kind of talk through some of our tarot habits, like some of our like normal tarot routines, rituals, ways that we read, ways that just all of those sorts of various other things that go into tarot. And I do have to say that this was loosely inspired by a couple of tags that were like from solidly a year ago. There was a tag, I believe, by Saturnarium, which was something about tarot quirks, which was sort of inspiring. There was another one that was like cliche tarot reader, who I'm now blanking on who came up with that one.
Anna,
was it?
Lady Anna, right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it was Astra Tarot Lady, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you. I like totally blanked. So those were a couple of tags that were like really fun, and we sort of thought, like I for example had never done a video on any of those tags, and we just figured that these were kind of fun topics to talk about. So we have just a list of questions that we're going to kind of go through, and each of us is going to sort of talk about what our tarot habits are, so the first question is, what is your regular tarot routine? So in terms of daily draws, or do we have a normal tarot routine that we follow? And so Julie, I believe, is going first because she rolled the dice, and of course she is going first.
Of course, I'm
always loses. So Julie, what is your normal tarot routine?
Okay, so it changes. I will say it's ever changing. And at this point, what I've been doing in terms of kind of like a daily tarot routine is that I do start off my day with a morning draw using 2 decks. And so it depends on the week. It depends on the deck, whether, how I'm going to do that reading for that draw. Sometimes, like for instance, this week, the decks I've been doing kind of like, first card is like, vibe of the day. Second card is actions or attitude that I should maybe adopt, according to the first card, right? In response. Sometimes the decks don't want to play that way, or sometimes I'm not in the mood, or so then again, depending, I might then decide to just, take note of the cards, which by the way, I do in my weeks. So if you can, I don't know how well you can see this, but I've pretty much allotted, space for every day. So I will just jot here. And then if I wanted to elaborate on the reading, if I have room, I can do that here or in the back of this week's. But in any case, so sometimes it'll be something where I just take note of it, and then maybe it'll be the next day that I reflect on the previous day's reading before then doing, that day's draw. I mean, sometimes it's very simple as, I want to actually look in like, a book like this, this is spiritual tarot, like just one of these comprehensive tarot guides, maybe holistic tarot. Let me just see what the guidebooks have to say. If there's anything kind of different to glean from, the traditional meanings that I'm used to. And so sometimes that's a lot of fun and a way to revisit some of the books that I have and really like. And then what I'll do is do I have it here? So if I do find that I'm, rereading a passage from the book and it's like, oh yeah, this is like a different way to look at this card, or even the guidebook from that deck. Then I have this thing where, if you can see here, I have them all tabbed by major and minor. And then I will just, flip to, and then, I've got, each card allotted with a certain number of blank pages, and I'll just jot like the different meanings down, meanings that, kind of deviate from what I'm used to. Just kind of want to take note of, like, oh, this is an interesting way to interpret this card. And I never really thought of this before. I would like to put this in my back pocket, or in my notebook, but back pocket, so to speak. So those are kind of the different ways in which I use my daily draw, if you will. It's just really, I'm all over the place. I tell you, I'm all over the place. But for now, this is what's been working for me and keeping things interesting and keeping me motivated to actually do a daily draw, because in the past that's gone by the wayside. I'm like, this is not really useful for me, at this point in time. So I would just not do it. But it's just, I like, and also it's just great way to like play with your cards, just so any way I can fit that in. So it's usually in the morning. Yeah. So that's why.
Okay, first of all, I love that idea of having a dedicated notebook to like jot down sort of like new impressions of a card or like new kind of ideas that you have about how a card could be interpreted, and just like have a page set up for every card in the deck. And then just that's such a good idea. I'm like super inspired now because I like have this notebook that I have not known what to do with, and now I'm like, oh, I kind of want to do that. Like,
do it. Yeah.
Any reading you do, if a card comes up and you're like, a new way of thinking about it comes to you.
Yeah.
And you just, that's so smart. I love that. I
Thank
love
you.
that. Okay. So I love that for starters. So I think I am next.
Yeah.
My tarot routine is actually an evening routine because I am not a morning person. And so if I try to like do tarot draws in the morning, it will just not happen.
Yeah.
So what I typically do in the evening is I draw a card for the next day. Basically, I sit and I reflect on my draw for that day, which I've actually been doing a lot better of because I was keeping all of my daily reflections like in a week's, and it wasn't enough space. So I recently got a Hobonichi this like an A6 size. And so that gives me a little more space every day to like write down a reflection. And that's been awesome. Like it's been really encouraging me to like think more, be very consistent about daily draws and like think more about, my reading every day. And lately I've also been very, consistent about having an oracle deck be part of that. So basically every evening I reflect on the draw that I had done for that day and just sort of like to think about some ways in which it could have been applicable to my day, and then draw cards for the next day. So I draw cards the night before for the next day is how I typically do it. Just because like, yeah, I am just trying to do anything in the morning is like literally like my brain is just non-functional. Like and if I have anything to do that day, I promise I will sleep until the last possible second before I actually get up and go do whatever I need to do. So I save it for the evening. It just works better. So so that's my daily routine. But honestly, having this journal to be able to actually write like a full, like small page, but like a full small page, enough for at least 4 or 5 sentences about the draw that day has been really really valuable for me. It's really made a big difference to that whole routine, so I really love it. So anyway, so that's mine.
Well, and we talked about this in our monthly catch up, where I too have now purchased a larger Hobonichi, the A6 size, in hopes that having, because this is, I run out of room, and it's not that I have to write something every day for my daily draw, but should I want to, I then want to have the room right there on that page to do it. So I'm hoping also the A6 will help me out with that. So yeah.
And I mean, certainly there are some days where my reflection will be something like, I don't know how this applied to my day yet. We'll have to see if I think of something in the future. Like, because sometimes you'd like draw a card and you're like,
exactly.
I don't quite know how to connect that, and maybe it will become clear to me later on down the road. But most of the time, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see him. I can see where that tied in. It's
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Heather.
Cool. So mine is very different because I do a daily draw in the morning, and I make a note of the card. But I don't tend to reflect on a card on a daily basis. I use my daily draws to reflect on my month. So at the end of the month, I look at patterns, like how many of each different suit came up, and did I get any stalker cards and those kind of things. So I do monthly reflect. I do not have the energy to journal on a card every day. I tried it, just it doesn't really work for me. In the morning, I don't have the time, and in the evening, I don't have the brain power.
Yeah, totally.
So I just kind of, although I'm going to try and do it a bit more next year with my digital planner has got more space for journaling. But literally all I do at the moment is I draw the card in the morning with my coffee. I like to read the guidebook sometimes. Same as Sarah, I'm back in that habit now of drawing an oracle card every morning with my tarot card as well. And reading both the guidebooks and thinking about how they combine, and and I keep them in my mind as I go throughout the day and stuff, but I don't tend to journal them. But then, as I said, at the end of the month, I have time at the end of the month and space in my bullet journal where I journal the month. I like patterns. That's for me, that's what I'm looking for. And I like to be able to, I think because my days are fairly similar. I get up, I work, go to bed. It's harder for me to make connections between my day and a card, but it's much easier for me to make connections over a whole load of different things that I've drawn throughout the month, and the patterns that they've made, and the month that I've had.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Actually, I will say that I do, because the planner that I use does have like the little, per day. I don't know, you guys, I don't know if you can see that, but it has also at the front this little index. And so for my tarot cards that I draw, I do make a daily note of just the card, and then at the end of the month, I sort of total up like how many cups, how many swords, and sort of like what was the card I drew most often, those, and just kind of record that up at the top, just a little, just so that I could see if there was a pattern.
Right.
And it is really interesting, because it often is very imbalanced, I find, in a way that makes sense. So yeah, it's nice to have that. I'm not as good at like spreadsheets and stuff as Heather is, but
no,
I'm a nerd. I'm just a nerd.
I love it. It's awesome. I mean, it's awesome. Like, it's cool to keep track of all of that stuff. So, all right. So the next question that we came up with is, do you do readings for any particular occasions or observances? Like, are there regular readings that you do on certain days or certain occasions?
So again, I have been very back and forth on that as well. I've in the past done readings for my birthday using, birthday spread that I would find. I have been in the last couple of years, I have done a year ahead spread. The last few I've taken from a Sarah spread from Water Child Tarot. She made up her own spread, and I used that. So it's less kind of, it feels less like pagan wheel of Erie kind of thing. Her spread does in terms of, in comparison to other types of yearly spreads that I've seen, I guess. So I've done that. This year, I have been fairly good about doing some type of spread or reading on a lunar observance. So anytime, there's a quarter moon, like full moon, whatever, I have that written in my Hobonichi weeks to do a spread. And it started off that I was, doing a spread in correspondence with that lunar cycle, or the phase of that lunar cycle. Like, oh, here's a full moon spread in Leo or whatever. And so I would then find a kind of a spread on, on Instagram or wherever that was speaking to that, that phase. I did find that it started to get repetitive though for me, that like the feelings of the spread started to get repetitive. So now I'm just using that lunar observance just kind of as a marker to check in with myself using some type of spread, any type of spread that seems to resonate with me, at that particular time. So that's what I've been doing. And then I will journal about that. And I think that's it so far in terms of observances. And then I will do sometimes like a mid-year check-in. I think I did one last year, kind of like a mid-year check-in reading kind of thing. And then of course I usually do like a year-end reflections. So where I don't know if I actually do a reading. I have maybe in the past, but even just revisiting the the yearly spread that I did.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always do a year ahead spread, and it's just a very basic, like, draw a card per month,
Okay.
and I write down for every month what the card was, and pay attention to it throughout the year. Like, what is my card for this month? And they're always spot on. Like, it's so weird how spot on they are. So that is something that I always do. I always forget to do a reading on my birthday. I never manage to remember to do a reading on my birthday. I don't know why, but it's just, I miss it every time. And then I do try to do the lunar observance spreads. Sometimes, sometimes they're like, they get posted on Instagram, sometimes they don't. Like, it's just, it sort of depends on how I'm feeling. I have found that I almost always take them from a somebody online, just because I feel like I don't know enough about astrology in particular to, like, really sort of know maybe, like, what the themes of that particular lunar observance would be. I'm sort of like, I don't know, full moon in Taurus, I don't know what that means. So, like, I just let somebody else tell me. So I use Ethany's a lot, and I also really like Alan Bones Tarot on Instagram. I use hers very, very frequently, because I think she makes like really pithy, like, not very big, but very pithy spreads that I think are really, really good. So and always are on, like, very sort of interesting topics, and, like, important things to think about. So that those are kind of the main ones that I do. Aside from that, I am really quite random. I don't have a lot of other sort of, like, routinized full readings that I do, aside from just the daily draw, because it's just like, if I feel like I need to do a reading, I do a reading, and aside from that, I don't follow a lot of sort of, like, strict routines. So
I used to do more. So now I do the same as you, Sarah, where I do a draw for the year ahead, and it's a card for every month of the year. I also have a spread for the year, where each card means, like, one position is what your health is going to look like over the year, and what your career is going to look like, that kind of thing. And I do a yearly reflection spread for the end of the year as well. I do one on my birthday. Normally, I remember to do one on my birthday. I don't always, but I try and do one for at least the new moon and the full moon. But I like to stick to the same reading. So I have the same spread all the time. I don't pay any attention to the moon phases. I just use the same tarot spread all the time. And I used to do one for each of the 8 Sabbats as well, but I haven't done that this year.
So then for your birthday, is there a particular spread you use, or do you just give yourself like a freestyle?
Yeah, I have a particular spread that I use. Yeah.
Cool. Very nice.
Awesome. Do you guys what was the question I was just going to ask? Oh, do you guys do deck interviews when you get a new deck?
I have. It's not always, but yeah, I still do that from time to time. Especially if it's a deck that I'm like, I'm not sure about you. Like, I bought you just like you, and yet.
Yeah, I used to do it every single deck I brought into my house, but just lately I've kind of stopped, and it's only when I really feel like, if I get a deck and sometimes I do it after I've used the deck for a bit, and I'm like, I don't know why we're not meshing. Let's maybe try and start over and introduce ourselves to each other. Not that I anthropomorphize my decks in any way. It's all in my head, but
Oh, I totally personify my decks. I do it all the time. And I used to use, actually, Katie Flowers had a great interview spread that I used all the time. And then recently I switched over to Thea's spread from Garden Goddess Tarot. It's just like a shorter spread. I like short, I gotta say. I mean, not that, like, Katie Flowers. It was like 6. It was 6.
Yeah.
That's not
cards.
It's not terrible, right? It's not terrible, but that's me. So it's like, okay, if I can do 3 cards. So yeah, it's been random. So yeah, I do still, but not all the time. So
we have a couple of questions.
I do not. No. It's just whatever deck. It might be a deck that I've allotted to myself for that particular week. Because lately as of now, I've been kind of switching up by a weekly basis. So just putting new decks in the rotation each week. So I might just grab the deck that's on my reading cloth, or just whatever I feel like if I'm doing a spread or something like that. So the spread has a certain vibe to it, then I will just maybe choose from my little deck library according to like the vibe. So it's really random. It's really, really random. Yeah.
Yeah. Mine are the same. I've started to try to be really routinized about daily draws and like trying to rotate through decks as much as possible for that kind of thing, and stick with one deck, that I just kind of like keep on my bedside table for the 2 weeks or a month or whatever to do the daily draws. But like, yeah, for lunar spreads and stuff like that, it's just sort of like whatever I'm drawn to in that moment is the one that I grab. So
exactly. Yeah. So
we have another
hello,
question.
everybody.
Yes, and welcome. We have a whole bunch of new people. I haven't welcomed everybody, but it's so nice to see you all.
Everybody.
People that have come in to be able to mention by name. But thank you all so much for joining us, and it's great to have you all here. So yeah. So we have this other question about the year ahead spread. So Heather, when do you do yours?
Well, I do it I don't do it on either, because I normally do it at the end of December, but for the 1st of January. So
yeah, I'm the same way. I do it towards the end of December.
Yeah, I always do mine on New Year's Eve.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
cool.
December 31st. So
yeah, I went through a stage where I was doing it on New Year's Eve, but I'm old and I'm just like, I drink my tea, I watch a bit of telly, and then I go to bed early on New Year's Eve now, because I have turned into that person.
Well, I do too. I mean, I spend every New Year's Eve in Colorado with my family, and so it's literally like me, my parents, my sister, my brother-in-law, and the 2 kids having New Year's Eve and going to bed like much earlier than other people on New Year's Eve. But usually after we all like kind of retire to our rooms, usually around like 9 p.m. Because that's when our parents want to go to bed. That's when I'll usually do my draws after we all go to bed. Yeah.
Very cool. Very nice.
Right. So, okay. Oh, and we have a question from Lala Love Song, and we actually this is one of the questions that we are going to answer. So maybe we should just address this one first. Do we always read with spreads, and when did we start reading with spreads? This was actually question number 5 on our list of questions, so we'll just skip to that one.
Well, okay. Did I? So when did I start reading with spreads? That was when very, very first time I ever picked up a tarot deck back in graduate school. Fucking Celtic Cross. I did not know any better. I did not know you didn't have to do it every day with every reading. I just did that Celtic Cross every day, all the time. It was like, and which is why I cannot look at the Celtic Cross right now, even now, or do one. So that I just thought that that's what you did every time. And I didn't know any better, and I wasn't patient enough to really do my homework and really do the readings, like actually read, the book that explains tarot. I was just kind of jumping around. And so, yeah, I did that for a while. And then then when I came back to tarot all those years later, like back in 2017, learning it in earnest, I stayed away from the Celtic spread, Celtic Cross. I was really all about like the freestyle readings, and less about spreads, quite frankly. I just loved doing my own kind of freestyle readings. I felt like that really helped me to like hone in on how I felt about each card, and just learning to practice how to read cards in combination and not get too mired in an actual spread. Then as time went on, I started really liking spreads, and I at one point had the Sasha Graham's 365 tarot spreads for the year, whatever. I think there's something to be said for having a spread with designated prompts where it gives you more structure and context, and can guide you in reading these multiple cards, right? And then forming a larger picture, and having it be this narrative. So in that way, I liked I really started liking the structure of a formalized spread. Now it is one of those things where I do a combination of both. I still love me the freestyle, freeform readings, and I would say that is a good majority of what I do when I'm like throwing down cards. Because I will normally have a specific question in mind. So it's really for, I've been noticing, like again, doing the lunar observances, I will pick a spread, and just, yeah, maybe certain other, like for instance, Halloween, I tend to pick a more structured spread. So I did Rumor Haven spread. And so, yeah, it's really up in the air, but if I'm sometimes I'm really, in the mood to do a more formal spread. And it's usually when I'm in the mood to really sit down and get in it, because a lot of times with my freestyle spreads, it is, it can be quick and dirty. Like I like to throw them down, and then I read them how I read them, and it doesn't take me all that long. But if I'm really in the mood to like geek out and really be in a spread, like in a reading, that's when I feel like, okay, time for me to look up a spread. Normally not more than not more than 5 or 6 cards, because then I start to, I just don't like them really long. I really do think across like traumatized me a little bit. Like it really scarred me. Like I'm just like, I cannot do very, very long spreads, but I'm not opposed to them. But for now, I do like to keep them, 5, 6 cards tops. So that's just me.
I always read with spreads in that, and it's not that I typically like go looking for a spread on every occasion. Like lunar observances, I do like to do that again because I like somebody to give me a little context as far as like what themes I might be thinking about for that particular lunar observance, just because I don't know very much about astrology. But just typically, if I am doing a reading for myself, I will have at least in mind some kind of structure around here is what each of the cards represents. And like, and in just about any situation, a spread that I use often, if I just, I'm like, I have questions about this situation. The spread that I almost always use is one that I learned from Katie Flowers, and I love it so, so much. And it's a 3-card spread, and it's within, without advice.
Oh yeah.
And it's literally like how I'm feeling, what's going on around me, and advice for the situation. And it works in every situation. Like it's just a really, really good, pithy spread that is just useful in almost every situation. And so, so I use that one a lot. And so even though it's, it's not, I mean, it's not like a big spread where like, every card is like representing something very, very, very specific. It's at the very least, I'm having more of a context as far as like what each of those cards is sort of addressing. And it's still, it's still a story. Like the cards still talk to each other, and there's still an overall kind of, theme that you can get from doing that kind of a spread. But I like having that structure of sort of saying, okay, this is kind of a little more specifically what each of these cards is going to be telling me. So I have never in my life been one of those readers who just sort of starts throwing down cards. Like I just don't do it that way. I think it's kind of because I tend to find that unless I give myself some structure ahead of time, I can tend to get a little bit like, it's like self-discipline. I can get like a little wishy-washy and like wishful thinking about some of the cards that get that I see, and like sort of like, oh, well, this must mean this really good thing, like because, like I get, unless I have some structure and discipline around how I'm interpreting things and like what they're referring to, I can get a little too rose-colored glasses about reading for myself. So that's one of the other reasons I like to have spreads, is just again, like it literally is like self-discipline,
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So that's why I pretty much always use them. And I have some other ones, like if I get questions from like a client, or if I'm reading for somebody, my friend or family, like I have some kind of specific because you tend to get questions on the same topic. So there are some ones that I often use for like career or like relationships.
Yeah.
I tend to have sort of a sense of like, kind of a generalized sort of structure for how I want to structure that reading, depending on what the question is.
Yeah.
So I have those kind of in mind too, but it's not the kind of thing where I have like hundreds and hundreds of spreads that I use. It's like I have a sort of like set structure that I've developed for each kind of question, I guess I'd say. So
that totally makes sense. I mean, even with my daily draw of like, the two, I guess that is like a 2-card spread if you think about it. Like
yeah.
5 and actions. That makes sense.
Yeah. So Julie, I also started with the Celtic Cross and used it religiously for years on end, not knowing that there was any other way to read.
Yes.
I just thought that's what you did.
That's what you do.
Now, like, I don't hate it. Occasionally I will still use that as a fallback, just because I used it for so long and I'm so comfortable with it. That occasionally
it's a good spread, honestly.
Like, I did not say it was a bad spread. I didn't say it was a bad
well balanced spread that addresses a lot of stuff about a situation. Like it's not a bad spread. Like it's not
really a bad spread.
Sometimes I do only use the first 6 cards because, again, I'm like you. Like, sometimes 10 cards is a bit much.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll just throw the first 6, and that's enough to give me what I want. But I do a mixture of both. So I do use spreads and I like them. And I actually like to play around with spreads and find ones, even if I don't have a specific question in mind. I'll just pick a random spread because I like the ability that it gives me to see cards in different contexts. Like if a card comes up in a position that doesn't feel not natural, it's a good exercise for my brain to figure out why that card has come up in that place. So I like it for that, for stretching my like paradigm around what the cards can and can't represent, I guess. But occasionally I will as well just chuck a couple of cards down and just read them as a set with no real positions or ideas of what they are. And I tend to do that more when I've got like a real definite question.
Right.
And then I'll just throw a few cards down as an answer to the question.
Exactly. And usually for my freestyle spreads are no more than 3 usually. So
my maximum is 5 for freestyle spreads. Yeah.
3. So it's not like I'm throwing down like 12 cards and then trying to make, I don't think that would work for me. That would not work for me for sure. Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah. So I mean that's sort of, I guess, I especially for things like with and without advice, it's still almost always like I have my question, and my question is basically like, what do I need to know about this situation? That's still the question, and it just happens that the spread is very effective in sort of covering the gamut of what I do need to know about the situation. Right. So that's why I always use it. But yeah, I guess I tend to use a structured question, draw 3 to 4 cards and read open. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think when I choose a spread, it is, like Sarah was saying, I do have something in mind. I do have a question in mind, and then finding that spread kind of lends to opening for like just a more structured and deeper exploration that would then ultimately, work together to answer that question that I have in mind. So it's like, if I'm exploring like, okay, why am I so pissed right now? Why am I so pissed? And I will find a spread on dealing with anger. And you know what I mean? And so then, those cards will ultimately, aid in my further exploring and unpacking, and then hopefully answering that question.
Yeah.
And I like spreads. I think sometimes I use them like journal prompts. Right? It's just like a free form way of, because the question, even a very specific question, is hard sometimes to know exactly what it is that you need to dig out of it, and the free form doesn't help, because it's like, I have 5 cards and they all mean stuff. I'm not sure how it helps me answer the question specifically.
Yes, this is why I always use spreads. Yeah. And I like this point, Ange, that if you're not sure how to phrase a question, or you need to sort of like organize a question, because again, like if the client's not sure how to phrase their question, typically their question is, I have this situation and what do I need to know about the situation? Like that's fundamentally almost always the underlying question, and so like, yes, there are definitely specific questions, but a lot of times that's the question, is like, this thing is happening in my life, like that's
help me figure it out.
And that's when it's really nice to have a spread to sort of just get at, okay, these are the specific things that you need to know. So yeah, totally agree with that, helping phrase a question.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, that is so true. So lots of really good comments on spreads here. I love this. So Laura, I like to make my own spreads so they fit the question, but there are some, there are people who make great spreads. Yeah.
I very rarely make my own. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a level of creativity that I just don't have.
I just don't want to sometimes. Like, I just don't. I'd rather just use, because other people have been so creative to make those spreads for us to use. So I'm just gonna go looking for one. Yeah, for sure.
This I will say, I never do the 9-card box. Never. I can't even think of a single time in my life I've ever done that.
I've never done that.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I've never done it. I've done it with Lenormand, but I've never done it with tarot.
Right? Yeah. Not with tarot.
Yeah, and there's no specific reason why not. Again, it's just I always feel like I have to have like specific positions assigned. So this is interesting. Yeah.
3-card open source. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Do you guys pull clarifiers?
I'm sorry. Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
I will very, very rarely, but I will.
Right. Mm-hmm. It has. Yeah, it's not too often that I need to, but I am not opposed to doing that at all.
Same. Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
I don't typically pull like explicitly a clarifier, but sometimes I just feel like there's a little more to know here. Like I just feel like there's more to know here, so I'm just adding one more card just to see what it says, So
exactly, just adding to it, adding more context. Yeah. And
then whenever you have if you can't find exactly what you want, so you create your own. Yeah, totally. Totally. Oh, I love this. This is so fun. Yeah. I need all the position meanings to be perfect. I need the shape to be perfect. I usually just change spreads I find to suit myself. Yes. That's another good point too. Like you can always find a spread that's a jumping off point, and then like
I've done that
to meet your needs.
I have definitely done that where I have revised spreads based on for sure.
I very, very rarely lay the spread out in the way that it is in the image. Like if it's 1's here and 2's there and 3, I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I don't even have the room to do that with some of these.
No.
Pretty. Now if I decide I want to take a picture for my journal,
same.
There's some, like I said, when I'm really in really mood to like geek out, be all geeked out on tarot, I'm like, I'm gonna do the full like journal with the stickers.
Yeah.
Then I will, but otherwise I will not lay them out that way. And even in my journal, it's some days the journal entries are very pretty and very organized, and other times I'm just really things down. So it's very random, but I appreciate the aesthetics. Always appreciate it, but sometimes I just don't have the room.
Yeah. And I like modifying spreads, because another spread I do really, really often is a modified version of the 9-card spread that Kelly from The Truth and Story often does, where it's like you have the 3 cards that are past, present, future, and then you have the elemental cards, which I've rearranged to fit the elements the way I see them. And then there's also like a top and a bottom card, which I do differently from the way she does it. So those are always like so it's like I love that spread, but I have totally switched it around to suit my needs, and I do that one for clients pretty regularly, actually. So
awesome.
Oh yeah, don't do fancy layout. Yeah, I always want to be able to get it on camera. Like the fancy layout to actually take a picture for my journal. So awesome. All right. Well, shall we move on to our next question?
Sure.
So our next question is, how do you shuffle?
Oh God. You know my shuffling woes.
This is Julie's trauma question. How do you shuffle?
Like with anything, is just all over the place. Okay, so my go-to, I love to riffle shuffle. It is what it is. It is my truth. I think it is the best way to randomize the cards, as opposed to my trying to overhand, which I also do actually. I do overhand, but I just don't find that if that is my sole means of shuffling a deck, my cards will not be randomized efficiently. They just won't. So my go-to is the riffle shuffle. If that means I have to break a thicker deck into smaller batches, I will do that. If I'm reading for somebody else, I will usually pick a deck where I know I can riffle shuffle the whole deck instead of having to break them up into little batches, riffle shuffling them. I just I cannot do that. So there are set decks where I know I can riffle shuffle them and just make it very quick and efficient. So that my friend's not waiting around for me to like shuffle the freaking deck. But so I will do that. And usually I will, even when I riffle shuffle, I still end with like doing an overhand, just kind of like at the end, it's like a topper where I'm just like doing an overhand. Now, I also use dice with the really incorrigible decks, like this one right here. So this is one that I'm using this week. This is the Wandering Moon Tarot. This is thick as fuck. I can't even breaking them into smaller batches. Riffle shuffling this is not great. I'm afraid I'm going to crease the cardstock. They're very hard to even riffle shuffle like this amount for my hands, for my little T-Rex hands, as Sarah calls them. So that's fine. That's fine. So then I've resorted to my dice. So I was thinking like today in preparation, like how have I been? Because this has been weird. Again, it's like I'm all over the place and I just kind of do what I do and don't even think about it. But for this deck, so as an example, what I've done is like, okay, from the previous draw, I put that back in. I kind of do see, and they go all over the place. I do like I do like a quick overhand. And then, but I know it's not randomized. So I will break it into two piles, right? And designate one as odd, one as even. I have my dice. These are 12-sided. And so the one color is to mark whether I'm going to pick from the even pile or the odd designated pile, which pile I'm picking for. And then the second one that I roll is the like how many cards I'm going to flip through before I land on the card that I ultimately draw. So it's going to be 1 through 12. And so what I've done is, okay, so say I just, with my, dice roll, okay, I'm going to pick from the even pile. This is my even pile. So then what I figured out I was doing apparently was then I'm doing another overhand shuffle really quick. And then I'm taking the next die, which say lands on number 9. So then I will just count to the 9th card. And then that is going to be the card that is ultimately for that day. I mean, again, I would never do this with a friend. Like I would just never take the time to do that. But for myself, that's kind of how it's been working, so that I'm not, ruining the deck, trying to shuffle it, and not stressing out my hands. And I have dice, so why not use it? And that's actually been working well for me. So it is very random.
So we did get a question from a person just wanting to know like what we're referring to when we talk about different shuffling types. And so
so the riffle shuffle is when you're doing this, and then you're bending them, kind of like arching them backwards, where then you see the professional card players doing it a lot, where they're riffle shuffling, and then they're arching them a different way to bridge them, and it makes this nice swooshy noise as they all fold in together really nicely. Which again, like some decks just don't make for good bridgers. But so that's what we mean by riffle shuffling. And then overhand, oh my god, okay, so overhand is like this, where you're taking parts from behind and kind of mixing them in and forward, which some people are fantastic with. I cannot do this very well to save my life without cards going everywhere. Usually cards will go everywhere. And I've been practicing I've been practicing, but so that's an overhand. I think those are the two main ones, right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
or people sometimes swirl them around on a table. Sometimes people fan and draw, you know, like, so those are some other ones that people do.
I mean, some people have, especially with, depending on the size of the card, people can riffle shuffle this way. I'm not very good at that.
Or even with just a corner.
Even with just using the corner, they can riffle just using like the corner like this. And then
that's how I do big cards, Julie, because I find it's easier because you don't have to hold the whole card. You just have to hold them from sides.
And they bend it like that?
Yeah, doing it just the two corners, if they're large, long cards, is much easier.
Okay. Yeah, I cannot do that.
How do you know when you're done shuffling?
What's that?
How do you know when you're done shuffling? Because I am very particular about how I know when I'm done shuffling, so I'm curious.
It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. I go on for a while. I do go on for a while because it's one of those things I have to feel like it's randomized enough that I've shuffled enough. So usually in terms of like riffling, I will riffle a good at least 3 to 4 times, if not more. And then in terms of, I don't know how long I'll go with this. With the overhand, not that long, because again, I'm usually doing overhand in combination with riffling or dice. So I feel like, and I'm just not great at it. So the overhand doesn't take as long, but it's just a feeling. That's it. So yeah. So that's how I shuffle. That is my jacked up way of shuffling, depending on the deck, depending on the card stock.
Yeah, I'm a very dedicated riffle and bridge shuffler because that is the way I am best at shuffling, because I grew up playing cards a lot with my family. And so that's how I learned to shuffle. And it's I enjoy shuffling that way. So there are a couple of decks where I have to overhand shuffle them. Those also happen to be my most damaged decks because I am terrible at overhand shuffling, like absolutely god awful terrible at it. And I always ding all the edges up, and like my texture tarot, because that cannot be riffle shuffled at all. That deck is like so janky because I have to overhand shuffle it, and it is like all the edges are dented and like some of the cards are creased, like it's a mess. So but I love that deck, luckily. But it's like it's by far my most damaged deck. So I always, if my deck is in order, I always am compelled to shuffle at least 7 times before I start to, just because I read somewhere that it takes at least 7 shuffles to fully randomize a deck. I don't know where I read that. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but I read it somewhere. And so now my brain is like, you must shuffle at least 7 times.
See, now my brain too is probably going to start doing that now. Like, must.
Sorry. Yeah. So, and I it's a very particular feeling when I know when I'm done, and it's like tingly. Like I start to get tingly when I know I'm done. That's how I can tell. It's like, oh, I can feel it coming on. This is the last shuffle. There we go. Okay, we're done. And then this is true. And sometimes it takes a while. And so it's a little embarrassing sometimes when reading for friends, because I'm like shuffling and shuffling and shuffling and shuffling, and they're like, are you done yet? I was like, nope. Sorry. Because I know that if I don't shuffle until I get the feeling, I will get a reading that makes no sense. Like invariably. It always happens.
Do either of you split your decks once you finish shuffling?
I always cut the decks.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I can cut.
Yeah. And I used to let the queer, like if I was reading for somebody in person, I would let them cut the deck. But then like people sometimes will like put reversals in when they cut the deck and like restack it. And like, that makes me crazy. So I stopped letting them, and I've discovered it doesn't make a difference whether they do it or not. So, so I don't let them do that anymore, but yeah, so that's my, it's just very regimented about how long I have to go until I feel done. Cause it's
Sarah tingle.
It's literally a tingle. Like it sounds weird. It sounds really weird, but that's
with the Peter tingle, Spider-Man with the Peter tingle, you know,
the Peter tingle.
It's the Sarah tingle.
Yes. it would be great if we could call it Spidey sense instead, because Tingle is also like your Peter Tingle. Anyway, so that's my shuffling routine. And again, yeah, it's riffle and bridge. I hate overhand shuffling.
I really don't like it either.
I don't like it, and it jacks up my cards, and it's literally like only the decks where I absolutely have to will I do the overhand shuffling. So,
and I think I just don't like it because I'm not good at it. I've seen other people like overhand shuffle on their channel.
And it's good, yeah.
They are great. They make it look so cool, and like, damn, if I could do that and not have my cards go everywhere and get bent and damaged and stuff, that would be great. But,
I love this quirk. For a big spread, I want to shuffle once per spread position. So 12 shuffles for like a 12 card spread. That's interesting. It's so funny how we all have these like weird compulsive things we do.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's great.
I love that.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, I don't actually think about how randomized or not my deck is, because when I draw cards, just because of the way that I think tarot reading works, I think that the card that actually comes out is irrelevant, because and Robert actually said something similar, Total Tarot, in the comments. No matter what card you get, it's relevant to the question and the position that it's in, and any card will work, just because of the way that I think it's a connection between you making connections with the images. So I don't care how random my deck is, but I do overhand shuffle. When we was reading this question, I was like, I don't have a way that I shuffle. But then I started concentrating on the way that I shuffle.
Yeah, of course you do.
And I overhand shuffle until I feel like I'm done. And then I riffle and bridge 3 times. And I have no idea why. I just do. And then I cut my deck, and then I read from the top. But yeah, so I only ever riffle and bridge 3 times, never any more and never any less. But I can overhand shuffle for ages, and I will just keep going for ages and ages and ages until I feel like I'm done.
So then, Heather, when you overhand, do you do it this way?
Nope.
You do it. And then you do it this way.
I do it that way.
I love it. We're all so specific. It's
like, no, that's wrong. And even as you're holding it, I'm like, no, why are you doing it like that?
Yeah, no, I've seen, and people can, like, it's amazing. Like, I've seen people do it this way, and I'm like, that's amazing. And they can do it so fast without bending without, again, cards going flying. Because I feel like even this way, you're even more susceptible to maybe bending the cards.
Yeah. I feel like I have more control if I do it the other way around.
This way.
Yeah, you just have more control over the cards, I guess.
I think the reason what I remember seeing as a reasoning for doing it this way is if your hands don't have the span to hold a deck sideways. So if your hand's too small, and you have to riffle shuffle, then you could do it this way. Because I've definitely found that for my hand, like to hold a deck like this, it's hard. It can be hard. It can be hard. So.
And it's hard sometimes to like let go of that number of cards that you actually, when your hand is like really stretched out.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that all of our answers to this would be the same. Like, it's not because I don't like people touching my cards. I don't mind if people touch my cards, look through them, like whatever, but I'm not going to let them shuffle, and I don't let them cut anymore, because they will do it wrong and get reversals in there, and it'll drive me crazy. So I never have people shuffle. So
I do. So yeah, no,
really?
different. Yeah. I'll do my own, but because I still have to do my 3 riffles. So I'll do my overhand, then I'll give it to them and let them do some overhand, and then I have to do 3 riffles, and then I'm not bothered whether I cut it or they cut it. But the last thing I have to do before I cut the deck is 3 riffles, and I don't know why. Like, you genuinely don't know where that's come from.
I love it. That's so funny.
That's interesting, because so you're like opposite to me. You're reverse, because I always have to end with, as much as I hate it, I have found that I always have to end with a quick overhand. If it's a deck that I can riffle. If it's a deck that I can riffle. Yeah, so it's just very odd. It's just, anyway. And I don't either. If I'm reading for somebody, it's not that again, care that they're touching my deck or anything like that. It's more of like a focus thing for me. So to have the deck pass on to them for them to do whatever, I just feel like I'm more in the zone if I'm the one handling it. I do my own shuffling. I'm the one. Now, if anything, if I decide that I'm going to do like, cut the deck, choose from this one or this pile, like sometimes I've done that, then they can choose, but that's not even touching the deck. They just get to choose which pile. But yeah, I have in the past, I think, let them touch the deck, shuffle the deck, whatever.
I don't know if it's because I don't know if it's like throw over from magical practice, but because I want, like, my logic for them touching the deck and shuffling the deck is because I want their intention in the deck when I cut it. But normally I only cut the deck in half. I don't I used to cut it in 3 because books told you to do that, and I used to cut it in 3 with my left hand because a lot of books also used to tell you had to do that too.
Oh, with your left hand?
Yeah. I don't know why.
I've read that before. Yeah, there's like something about your left hand being more intuitive because it's like connected to the right side of your brain or whatever. None of which is actually like scientifically true.
No. But now I cut it with my right hand because I'm right-handed and it's more comfortable, and I just cut it into 2 piles, and then I put the bottom pile on the top. That's how I cut now.
Do you guys read? Oh, sorry. Do you guys read jumpers?
Not usually.
It depends. I feel like, again, I don't know whether it's true or not, but I feel like I can tell whether a card has jumped out or whether I've just dropped it because I'm clumsy.
But see, that's the thing, yes.
And if it feels like it jumped, then I will read it. Otherwise, no, I just shuffle it back into the deck.
Same. Normally for me, I'm clumsy. So my clumsy ass hands, it's like, okay, no, this is just me not being able to shuffle and cards flying everywhere. So I have no problems putting them back in. Because, I am not opposed to reading jumpers. I have definitely read jumpers, but more times than not, I know it's just my inability to shuffle. And so I'll just throw those back in and keep going. So yeah.
I feel like I can tell the difference too. It's like, especially if like multiple cards like fall out at the same time. And then I'm usually just like, okay, that was
me.
that was just me. But like, if I do get what feels like a legit jumper, I always just set it aside, like face down, and I don't look at it until the end of the reading because I always like if a card jumps out, I'm like, okay, we're gonna set you aside, and like you have something specific to say, and then I'll do the rest of the reading, normal spread and everything, and then turn over the jumper or jumpers at the end just as an additional message. So that's how I always do it. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
All right. This is so interesting.
Wow.
Everybody does different stuff.
It's so cool though.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, this is why I love hearing about how different people practice. It's just
because there's no one right way.
No, of course not.
There's no one way.
And sometimes people say things and you go, "Ooh, that sounds interesting."
Oh, I didn't that.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, shall we move on to the next question? The next question we had come up with is, do you have rules about what kinds of questions you ask?
For myself, not really. For people I read for, yes. So for myself, like really anything goes. I used to be, like in the earlier days, if you will, I used to be a little more careful about like more predictive kind of yes, no, but now I put those in the mix. If I want to ask a yes, no question, I'm perfectly fine to ask myself a yes, no question and throw down some cards. So really nothing is off the table. I just have to remember that like you always need to be careful about the question you ask because then your cards are going to give you the answer whether you like it or not. So you got to be prepared for any number of answers you could receive. So if you really, really don't want to know and you're really not ready, those are things I have to be mindful of. But certainly when it comes to reading for others, it's the kind of list that people have established of like the no-nos for like, no, I am not a medical professional. I'm not a lawyer. So anything, any kind of question that pertains to like, your physical health, medical, medical issues, anything that deals with the law, any kind of lawsuit, any kind of, whatever. Those are the types of questions that, and, and again, even like yes, no questions, I'm not really necessarily opposed to them asking it and my answering it, but usually it is like we've talked about in this live. It's about when I'm throwing down the cards, it is really kind of having that question in mind, but reframing it so that it's more open to like, these are the possibilities as it being a flat out yes or no thing. Where it's more open to like agency and it's more open to a dialogue rather than being a hard yes or no. So I mean, there was one instance early on where a friend had asked me a pregnancy question, and I was stupid enough to answer it. And after that, like that was a lesson learned. I mean, the reading was correct, but not in the way that she wanted it to be. Let's just put it that way. So yeah. So, but then to explain the nuances of that, to someone, and just also just in general, just no. Like I shouldn't, I knew as soon as I did that reading, I'm like, I should not have done that reading. It was just too early in my practicing the tarot to really, like been like, that was a bad idea, Julie. Like that was a really bad idea. So then when she came with me and so she came to me again at a certain point, and I'm just like, no family oriented questions, no health oriented questions. No, so it's really tricky, and it can be very complicated. And that's me.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, again, Beth just mentioned you, Sarah. Do you say I am a lawyer, but my deck is not? And I should say that because I also like, again, like I don't know. I guess I always like sort of draw a fine line where it's like, okay, I can like do a reading to help you like navigate, how you feel during a lawsuit or a medical issue or something like that. What I can't diagnose you. I can't tell you how it's going to turn out.
Exactly.
I can't, like, I'm not going to like those kinds of things, those questions I'm not going to answer. But if if you're just wanting to know, okay, like, how should I approach this meeting with my lawyer, or what can I do to make myself feel better as I'm trying to, navigate my new diagnosis or like whatever it is. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about that stuff, but I'm not going to tell you the sex to your baby. Like that's just, like that's not, I'm not going to do that. But so yeah, I mean, those are like, again, it's the same kinds of like basic rules. I don't like yes or no questions, and I don't do them for myself or anybody. And it's not because I have any kind of like ethical quandary about it. It's just because like how boring, like to turn over a card and be like, okay, yes, like there's so much more to know about a situation. And like the beauty of tarot is that it can tell you, so much more about the situation. And so it's like, okay, do you want to answer a yes or no answer, or do you actually like want to know about the situation? And like that's the whole point of tarot, is to give you that kind of depth. And so I will always tell people, like, if you ask me a yes or no question, it's going to get rephrased into, what do I need to know about the situation? So
and I think especially reading for others, that is ultimately what they want. If you were to be like, yes, the answer to the question is yes, I'd be like, what the aren't you going to give me a reading? So ultimately deep down, they want something more in depth. They want something more exploratory. They want a dialogue. So for sure, when I'm reading for others, like, it will ultimately come to like, well, no, we'll answer this question, but we'll answer it in a way where, we're leaving things open to discussion, and that these are the possibilities, right? But yeah, for myself, sometimes I do want that quick yes or no. Like, and it depends. And then, I can do tarot. I've also done Lenormand is, I think, great for that as well. But yeah, so for sure, yeah. When I think when it comes to tarot, it is really all about the fun of it, and the insight that you can get definitely leads more when you're doing like it's way more satisfying when you can really dig in deep and it being like larger than a yes, no, for sure. Yeah.
Same thing with predictive readings too. It's like, okay, like, because I do predictive readings, but humans still have free will. So
exactly.
all a predictive reading is going to tell you, like, the current path you're on, what's likely to happen,
Right.
you know, like that is all it can tell you in my personal belief. This is my personal belief. And so, you know, so a predictive reading is like, again, much more, it's not so much useful to know what's going to happen as it is useful to know what do I need to do in order to make the thing I want to happen. Like that's, again, the more useful and valuable information that you can get out of a tarot reading is that. So again, it's like that. I'm always going to rephrase again a fully predictive question to, you know, there's more information that you can get here than just what's going to happen. So we're going to go into the more information that's available as opposed to just answering the predictive question. So
I don't think I have anything to add. What you've both already said. Genuinely. I'm pretty much the same. And when I read for myself, no, I don't really have any rules in terms of the questions that I will read for myself. But and I don't read for other people very often. And even then, I don't know if I have like hard and fast rules, like no health questions. I think that I would, if somebody came to me with health questions, I would be very clear about the type of things that we can and can't talk about, and the tarot can and can't help you with regards to health. Again, like I wouldn't diagnose anybody because, well, A, that's irresponsible, and B, it's illegal. And I wouldn't give somebody legal advice or medical advice because I'm neither a lawyer nor a doctor. But I think most people aren't really looking for that anyway. They just don't know how to ask what it is that they want to ask. And as the person doing the reading, I think our job is to figure out a way to, like Sarah said, like rephrase what they're asking for in a way that tarot can give them that information, because a lot of the time they don't know what tarot can and can't do for them. But I don't think I have any like, I'm absolutely never going to do this type of reading for myself or someone else. It's just about being really upfront and honest about what the limitations are.
And it's always so context-based. It's always about context. Always. Yeah. So that question, have you, when you have read for others, have you, either of you, had like a shit experience with a reading like I had with my, I mean, it wasn't, and that's the thing, it wasn't a bad reading. It just was, you know, for the topic that it was like, you know, because it's a sensitive topic, right? And so anyway, it was an accurate reading, and that was kind of the problem. So, I mean, have you had experiences in the past? I mean, maybe not in that context, but just complicated or just a shit reading, or, you know, with somebody that you've done for somebody else?
Yes.
And you don't have to go in. You don't have to go in. I was curious. Yeah.
Not specifically with a client, but reading for a family member who wanted a reading and like wanted to do it with like other family members also sitting at the table. And
where's this going?
And yeah, and the let me just put it this way, like, as the message that the cards gave was completely accurate, but I very much had to dial back the way I delivered that message in such a way that my aunt, who is the person I was doing the reading for, would not throw me out of her house. So I had to be very circumspect about the way that I phrased it. And then as soon as my mom was also there, and as soon as we walked out the door, I was like, holy shit, you want to know what that reading really said? Like, and it was like, yeah, here it said, it's the reading specifically identified what my aunt's psychological issue is. And there was just no way I could say that to her in front of everybody. So it was.
So then would it be one of these things that if you were to do a reading for a family member again, it would be with the rule that it's just that person alone? And not with everybody else. Yeah.
Although even then
that would have been hard to just blur out. Like,
that would have been a very, like, again, I would probably be still banned from her house if I'd actually said what the reading said. So but again, that's like a family member situation. And I guess it's easier like with somebody that you're not trying to maintain like an ongoing relationship with.
Yeah.
If it's a client, it's a lot easier to sort of kind of go out on that limb and say like, look, listen, this is what I'm seeing about the situation. Whereas with a family member, it's like, okay, I have to actually like still be able to talk to this person. I can't fully like read them the riot act about like what the cards actually said their issue is. So, so that was just kind of an odd situation, but yes, that was a very shitty reading. So
thank you for sharing. I was just curious. I'm like, am I the only one who suffered through what was a very painful?
It was awkward. It was awkward. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I've never had an experience like that, luckily, but I think the only thing is when I was first starting to read for people, or when I was first starting to read, I think I read for other people too early. And so I've had experiences of people expecting me to be able to give them more than I can and not knowing how to navigate that because my own knowledge of the limitations of tarot just wasn't good enough. And so that was like that's when I took a huge step back and was like, right, I'm not reading for anybody ever again. Drama. And now I'm much more experienced, but also I just have a lot more life experience to be able to deal with those kind of situations anyway. I'm more inclined to read for people again now because I think I can handle it better.
Makes sense.
So it was more about how I handled it than anything else.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing, ladies. Makes me feel a little better. Still haunts me to this day.
I totally get it. There, sometimes people ask a question and they don't, and if you know them, you know that they don't actually want to know the real answer. And yet it's like, okay, how do I deliver this in such a way that they don't hate me forever? And yeah, that can be quite hard. So the next question is the age-old debate: reversals or no? So
I mean, no, in terms of like physicality, like my decks don't have reversed cards in them. I do read reversals though. I read the card in shadow. Context, depending on where it lands for a prompt in a formalized spread, depending on there are just so many factors. Context being, again, one of the biggest ones, right? Of whether you're going to read that card in shadow. So for me, in the beginning, I did read with physical reversals in the deck. And then I just found it annoyed me to see them. And you have to turn them upright. At least I did. I would have to turn them upright. And I, at one point, I decided, why do I have to have these upside down? Why do I have to have some like physically reversed or not? Like, can't I just, based on, again, context, based on, again, like the prompt of a certain, in the reading or et cetera, in relation to other cards, like, can't I just ascertain for myself whether this card should be read in shadow or not? And then from then on, I have never put reversals in my deck. Now, I mean, this is not to say that I never will. I've certainly heard of instances where, say for, I don't know, like an Oracle deck. Usually Oracle decks don't use reversals, but some do. And so people have had great readings with having them be in reverse. I mean, I'm not opposed to trying things like that out. I just, in terms of tarot specifically, I have not used physical reversals and have not felt like it has given me inaccurate readings or that all my cards are now like, I have no cards in shadow, no reversals in no, I get plenty. I get plenty. So for me, I just don't find it all that useful anymore. In the beginning, sure, for practice purposes and relearning, okay, but now I feel like I personally, I just don't think I need that visual, because that's all it really has became. That's what it really became for me at some point. It was just a visual of like, oh, this is meant to be a reversal.
Yeah.
Well, I can decide for myself whether it is or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My issue, and this is something I discovered very early on in my tarot career, is that if I use physical reversals, i.e., look at a card upside down, I don't get anything from the image. Like the image doesn't make visual sense to me anymore, and therefore I'm not actually intuitively getting anything from the artwork. And that's a big part of how I read, is what details are jumping out to me from the artwork, and like what, like that is a big cue for me. But when a card is upside down, like I'm just not making visual sense of it. And so it's just not useful for me to see a card upside down. So so just similarly to Julie, I use other context clues like the spread position and the other cards in the spread to tell me whether or not the card should be interpreted as quote unquote reversed,
Right.
which I also think is a little bit of a misnomer, because there isn't just like a reverse meaning and an upright meaning. Like there's like so many meanings, and it's sort of like, it's more about, it's not even about upright versus reversed. It's just sort of like generally, how do I interpret this card based on these other context clues? But so yeah, but I did just recently have that one deck, like that Citadel Oracle. I accidentally shuffled in reversals, which is very rare for me to do, because I am very regimented in my shuffling about I shuffle in such a way that reversals should not get into the deck. But because that card is weird shaped, like they all kind of spun around when I was shuffling it, and like I ended up with reversals, and it read for me very well with reversals. So that one, I was like, oh, okay, I will actually use upside down cards. And also just partially because the image of it, I don't know, it just wasn't so much about the image in terms of how I was reading that oracle. So so that one worked out okay. But that's like a very, very rare, that's like, that never typically happens. So that's just sort of its own weird thing. But yeah. So
I've never read reversals. I've never, when I first started learning tarot, I decided that I wasn't going to use reversals because there was like 78 cards to memorize and learn upright. And that was already really like, oh my God, that's so much. So I thought I'll learn to read them all upright. And then when I'm ready, I'll start introducing reversals into my reading. And what actually happened was, as I learned to read them upright, I realized, like you say, Julie, that there's every possible connotation of that card is in that card already. And it's just about where they fall and how they relate to the other cards that you've pulled and all that kind of stuff. So by the time I was ready to introduce reversals, I really felt like I just didn't need to anymore.
Yeah, they actually, having reversals hurts my readings more than it helps them.
It just, I find it distracting.
It's visually distracting.
I'm turning them upright anyway. Like, so I'll just start like that from the scratch. It's fine.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, and this is an interesting question, because yeah, I mean, not if you don't read reversals that way, where it's like the fact that the card is right side up or upside down is what gives you the clue as to how to interpret it, then you kind of avoid this question altogether, because it's other information that's telling you which meaning is applicable in that situation. So so this one, to me, like I don't have that happen to me, just because I don't let the upside downness of the card give me information. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it's a great question.
Yeah. And this is another one.
And I agree. I think that is absolutely a risk, but I think that's a risk whether you use reversals or not, or whether you just using tarot in general, or any kind of divination tool, you are on some level at risk of fooling yourself, if that's how we want to put it. But ultimately, if you're the one interpreting what those things mean, there's always going to be that risk that you interpret based on a particular bias or a particular outcome that you want it to be. And I think we always have to have that in mind.
And this is a lot of the reason why I say that spreads give me discipline because
Mhm.
the spread position in a lot of cases is what's telling me whether or not a card should be interpreted more in light or more in shadow. Like that's a big element of it. Like if you're doing a spread and the prompt is what's holding me back, and you get the 10 of cups, like you're going to be interpreting the 10 of cups in the more shadowy way of interpreting the 10 of cups as like an over idealized situation as opposed to a genuinely happy situation, or however, just as an
Exactly.
example. So and that's one of the big reasons why I feel like spreads for me lead to discipline in how I interpret, because it helps me to not see things through those rose-colored glasses. So.
Mhm. So that's interesting. I don't shuffle reversals in as a rule. Okay.
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just reading. Occasionally a reversal pops up and I'll make a mental note of how it came out, but still lay it down upright. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aquamarine 18 is saying, I like reversals in a free form spread, no set positions, but I don't use them in a defined spread because, yes, exactly, because the spread position gives me context.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is, don't think of cards as having reverse meanings. It's
Yes.
something like delay, weakened effect, distorted. Sure. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I mean, there's so many ways that you can interpret
Mhm.
interpret a card that go beyond just is this good or is this bad? Is this upright or is it reversed? There's so many
Yeah.
other ways
Mhm.
that those elements can be communicated to you. So, and then this one I like too. The card literally being upside down doesn't change the meaning for me. It's the overall energy and it all ties in together. Yeah, that makes total sense. So, yeah. And same with Marlena here. Yeah. It's a conversation between cards. And
Exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
standalone meaning.
Right. It's not isolated. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we have one more question. This is the one that I'm very interested in hearing Julie's take on, because I know she does this a lot. Do you use multiple decks in the same reading, and how do you do that?
Yes, I do. Even for just, again, the daily draws that I've been doing, I will use either like two tarot. Like this week, I'm using two tarot. Sometimes it'll be a tarot and an oracle. Yes, in a reading, like in a spread, I may do that. Usually it's for, I guess it's more for like a free form spread where I will mix, say, like two tarot together. And a lot of times, like that second tarot deck will be more of like, as we've talked about before, clarifying for, the cards in that first deck, or, adding more context to the cards in that first deck. So like, I'm just trying to think of spreads that I've done so again, for my daily draws, like I'll use one tarot deck to have like the vibe check, right, for the day. And then I'll take a different tarot deck, or it could be an oracle, and that will be my resulting like attitude or action. So that's just one simple example. What I've done some freeform spreads where, and I think it was actually based on like Renee from Meadowlark Mystic. She had done a whole video where she talked about mixing two tarot together. So like I said, it would be like, it would be, say, one row of say 3 cards from tarot deck number 1, answering a specific question. And then there would be like second row of tarot deck 2, serving as like clarifier, adding context to the first set of cards. And so when you lay them out in the rows, you can read across. So I would like read across and have those be readings, and then you read from bottom to top in terms of like deck number 2 clarifying or adding context to deck number 1. So and I hope I'm explaining this okay. I feel like I need visuals, but like you read them both horizontally in that group, and then vertically, so that so that's how I have done spreads in the past. So yeah, mainly for, again, like clarification and like adding context purposes. So that's been the main way I've done that. And yeah, of course, then it becomes really interesting, say, if you get like strength from tarot deck number 1, and then strength again in tarot deck number 2. You know what I mean? So it adds, it adds definitely new layers to and makes you think harder.
Laura actually mentioned this. If you pair 2 tarot, what if the same card turns up twice?
Yeah.
Because 2 towers. That that would feel a little bit overwhelming.
Well,
2 towers the same.
I'd be like, okay, I get it. I get what you're trying to say. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yes.
And,
we noted.
Yeah, that's usually how I do read that. It's like, all right, clearly you're telling me that I'm being stubborn about something about this particular card. I'm being stubborn, or, I'm not seeing the forest or the trees. That's kind of usually how I interpret it. And like, when I'm journaling, I'm taking specific note of those particular cards, well, especially when it comes up twice, and like what position they might come up in, etc. So it's like highlight, scribble, star stickers. Okay. Double tower or double whatever. Gotta take mental note. I'm like, yeah. So
it's funny when reading for myself, I even have certain cards that I tend to think of as being like a sign that the deck is actually shouting at me a little bit. Like when the Knight of Cups comes up. It's always to me a sign that it's like you and your issues.
It really is.
Pay attention
it really
to
is
what I'm saying. Like it's I don't know. That's when that card comes up, I'm always like, oh, okay.
And that's
gotcha.
That's how I feel when it comes to like a double card like that. It's like they're like poking you in the shoulder,
right.
Like really aggressively. Like, get your shit together. Like stop ignoring or evading this. Because you say you see it in deck number 1, but no, I've got deck number 2 here to tell you. Same card again to tell you otherwise. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I find that just super interesting because like I'm trying to think of a time in my life when I've ever combined more than one tarot deck in a reading. Like it's just not something I like ever do.
I would encourage you to try, just because it's it's not only interesting when it adds certain like dimensions like that to a reading, but it's also just kind of fun, like just from a visual standpoint, seeing like different art forms together. And again, like the way I read when it's like across, so you're reading the row, but then you're also reading the column. So again, it's one of those situations where, again, unless you're doing like the 2 card daily draw that I do, which is quicker, but when combining tarot decks like that, you're really sitting down for a very exploratory reading, because it's not a quick and dirty, like it's definitely not a quick and dirty. Like you really want to sit with both decks. So I just think it's fun, and I think it just makes it more visually stimulating. It makes for a more interesting reading sometimes, and it's great practice too. So all those things.
I've done it once, like really early days, where I thought, oh, this might be fun. So I did a spread, and I pulled all the positions from one deck, and then I pulled all the positions again from another deck, and it was really overwhelming. And
yeah. Sure. I mean, I got to say, I don't really do like those larger spreads all that often. I really stick to, if I'm like mixing them up, I'm sticking to like a 2 or 3 card draw, that kind of thing. But it's fun when you're doing, so like the method I was telling you earlier, that amounts to 6 total cards, right? Which is not that many. But when you're reading them across and then you're reading them perpendicular, then that opens up the reading more. It is a longer reading. So it's definitely one, like I said, you want to pour yourself a cup of tea and, just, it's like something you stick into and, have your journal out. It's definitely very reflective, and not quick. It's not quick.
Yeah. Take your time kind of reading.
It is. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's, it's just something that has never really occurred to me. And like, even tarot and oracle together, the tarot is generally the main message, and and drawing an oracle card the vast majority of the time it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to draw an oracle card as a sort of like like to put a button on the whole thing, you know,
Mhm,
this,
mhm.
or to sort of say this is the overall energy, or this is sort of the closing thought, or, you know,
Right.
it's very much that kind of thing, as opposed to being like, you know, saying the oracle deck is giving me the same amount of information as the tarot reading, because I guess I just don't see it that way. But
Mhm.
it would be cool to try to do things differently. I feel like I really, that's an interesting method that you mentioned, Julie, and I think it would be very interesting to try.
Yeah, it's fun.
Mhm.
And even just something as simple as switching out the oracle deck for another tarot deck, and it had to serve the same purpose. So in
Mhm.
that way, it wouldn't be overwhelming.
Mhm.
It serves the same purpose.
Mhm.
We're just using 2 tarot decks instead of a tarot and
Mhm.
an oracle. Um,
Mhm.
and actually, the year ahead spread that I did, that Sarah from Water Child Tarot, I remember correctly because my brain is um, fried, but that used 2 tarot decks actually.
Mhm.
That one, and another reason that I was like really stoked to try it, because it used 2 tarot decks, and I really
Mhm.
liked that, and
Mhm.
just, yeah, a lot of dimension. So
Mhm.
yeah, but hopefully that answers the question. Okay, I would
Oh,
love to
totally.
hear other people use 2 tarot decks,
Mhm.
as
Yeah,
well.
we've got a lot of people in the chat talking about it. Um, Ange was talking about how she often likes layered readings with
Mhm.
multiple decks, and like tarot, oracle, and charms included. And then this is Beth says she often uses 3 different decks, 9 cards total, 3 in each row.
Girl, 9 cards.
Yeah,
It was like,
9
woo,
cards, 3 deck. Like
combo.
that's intense, but it sounds really cool,
Wow, yeah,
actually.
middle adds context, 3 for advice outcome. No, that's great. That actually,
Mhm.
yeah, that sounds very structured, actually.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
It's very
that's
awesome.
that's really cool. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Marlena had said too that she likes to read multiple decks, likes the sort of the layered approach as well. So yeah, so that's really cool. And I don't know, I'm very I don't know, I've always just sort of felt like, okay, I'm going to pick this deck for a reading, and it's because that particular deck I'm drawn to for some reason, and it just has literally never occurred to me to use more than one. So I really should try that and just see how.
Yeah, you know, other than that, once when I tried it just on a whim, and again did the whole, oh my god, this is really hard, I'm never doing this again. And then never really thought about it again. And now I hear people talk about it, and I'm like, oh, but now that sounds kind of interesting, and I want to try it, but I want people to tell me how they do it so they don't panic.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would say, start small. Just replace the oracle, because usually, when you're working with the oracle, you're pulling. A lot of times there'll be fewer cards than with, like, say, the tarot, right? So just
Yeah.
switch out the oracle for the tarot, or do the 2 spread, vibe and actions, or attitude, like, and then have that be 2 separate tarot decks. This is a very simple way where you're not overwhelming yourself with a bunch of different cards, and it's just very, very simple.
Yeah, this is interesting too. 25 card spread, but 5 by 5. But the top of the row of each row
Ooh,
is oracle or lingering. That's yeah,
mhm.
that's really interesting. Yeah, that's
See, I've done that. I've done like
Mhm.
tarot and oracle, or I've done a tarot reading and used and pulled in some Lenormand.
Mhm,
I've just
mhm.
never done 2 tarot decks together.
I
I've
recommend
never
it.
done a 25 card spread either, though, to be
Yeah.
fair. I mean, that's dedication. I'm a
I
hat
mean,
off.
yeah, it's the kind of thing where you gotta like set aside
Yeah.
half a day to like really get into it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're really geeking out then. You're
yeah,
really
I love
geeking out.
that. I love
I think
that.
that's really impressive. I'm like in
Yeah.
awe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Right. Well, we are an hour and a half in, and I think we've covered our list of questions. So I don't
Yeah.
know if you guys have anything you want to add, but I've loved this. This has been
yeah,
such
this
a
is
fun
great.
conversation. Like,
Yeah, it really has.
yeah. So, and I've loved seeing everybody else's like comments and
Yeah,
thoughts, and everybody does this all so differently, and it's
I know.
just
It's giving me some ideas of
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I'm gonna have to go back through the chat later when
Yeah.
it's up
Yeah.
and just
yeah.
steal some stuff out of there to play with.
Exactly.
Exactly. I know I've missed a ton of stuff, like there's just been such a good conversation happening in the chat, and like, so I can't wait to I can't wait to reread that back. And I am totally taking Julie's idea and making a notebook like immediately that is specifically for, you know, extra thoughts about particular cards and just being able to keep track of that, because that's genius. So
Awesome.
I'm going to be doing that like right away. So,
Awesome.
ooh, make it a tag.
Ooh.
So,
what should we name the tag?
should we call it like tarot habits?
Yeah, hashtag tarot habits right now.
Hashtag tarot habits?
Why not? I don't think I've seen that tag.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why not?
Okay.
Cool.
Hashtag tarot habits. All right. Once we're
Cool.
done, I'll put the hashtag in the video and in yeah. So that would be really fun.
Sweet.
So cool.
Awesome. I can't wait to see some VRs.
Me too.
Woo.
All right, folks. Well, thank you all so much for again being part of this discussion. Like, this has been super, super fun. Our next episode is actually 3 weeks out. So it's going to be on Julie's channel on December 2nd. So keep an eye out for that. I do know that we are intending for that last episode of the year to be our kind of like standout decks for 2023. So that is what we're planning to be talking about. So we will be making a return to the deck discourse in the next episode, but this one has been really, really fun. And yeah, thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you on Julie's channel in a couple weeks. So
thank you. Bye-bye.
oh, and then I got to put up our thingy.
Yes,
our cool thingy. Yes. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.